Welcome to the ATA podcast, where we talk to former elite athletes sharing their insights and wisdom derived from successfully transitioning into life beyond the game. A very warm welcome to the Athlete Transition Accelerator podcast. Carl and I, as ever, are delighted to be joined by an interesting guest, Oliver Soames, former first-class cricketer, who's going to share a little bit of insight and wisdom into his transition and life beyond the game. So, Ollie, very warm welcome, and thank you for sharing your time with us today.
No problem at all. Thank you very much for having me.
No, you're very welcome.
Cheers,
you're
Ollie.
very welcome. Now, obviously, we always state at the outset of our episodes that we're here to talk about life beyond the game. But I think it's nice just to have a nod back into that professional career, your first-class cricket career, and just give the listeners a bit of a flavour for who you are. So the way we always frame that is to throw the question back to you. When you think about that first-class career, if you pull out one or two memories that you look back with a sense of pride, what comes to mind? What would you illustrate as a little snapshot into your professional career?
So, first-class debut is probably how I reflect on my career as being one of the highlights. And I think it's quite cliche, but I don't think I went through the traditional steps to get there. So I was never part of an academy as such. At 18, I was sort of told, go off to Loughborough University, but we'll keep in touch by Hampshire. And actually at the age of 22 was when I came back and got my trial. So it was 4 years of real hard work outside of the game to sort of get that opportunity and come back. So that's one that I take a lot of pride in. And I think even later on in my career, coming outside of the county system to try and get those opportunities again is quite a hard gig to do. And then, my first class maiden 50 against Warwickshire as well, sort of proving to myself that I can do it at that level. Was also a nice one that I look back on with great memories.
Yeah, two fabulous examples. And just going back to that first one, Ollie, I think one of the things we often say that so many elite sportsmen and women have and don't realise is an innate sort of, not innate because it's not something that you're just born with, but a sense of resilience. People are not always aware of the depth of resilience that they've got, and it's very, very transferable into industry because no career goes in a straight line. When you move into industry, you're going to have challenge and adversity to navigate. So there's a great example at still a relatively young age, at 18, told, well, no, it's not going to happen for you. It would have been easy to sort of fold there and say, well, it's not meant to be. I'll go off, I'll do something else. But you kept going. And that must have been quite a challenging period because it wasn't just you kept going for a few months and came back in. You said there it was several years before you got back in and actually got into professional cricket. Yeah,
I like to think that cricket's a sort of an analogy for life, especially as a batter. You have to be resilient throughout. And so I think that gets sort of put into your DNA from a young age. You know, at the age of 10, 11, especially back then, back when we were sort of starting off, people were, there were no retiring, etc. At league cricket. If you're out, you're out at, 10, 11. So you're telling sort of myself at a young age that, if you're not good enough today, come back the next week and park that and come again. So I think it gets built into you from a young age. And I think, you're looking back at my career in those younger years, it's part of the game. It's part of the DNA as an athlete to keep coming back, to keep picking yourself up after those failures, to keep coming back and enjoying it. It was something that was always deep down inside me. And I think that was sort of the contract I made with myself at about 15 is, I don't want to die wondering. And I want to, not leave any stone unturned. So it is a resilient thing, and but I think it's part of sport. And once you make that contract, it's sort of what you buy into. Injuries have a part, not being picked in teams. It's all of those things. But
absolutely. I think you're right. Once you're into that elite environment, it becomes more commonplace because you're getting rejection, adversity, injury. The coach is you're in favour with the coach or you're not. You get dropped, you get picked. But I like your analogy there because it's before it even started, before you even tasted. It's a bit easier to stay resilient and hold the line when you're in the environment because you've tasted what it's all about and you want more of it. But when you're on the outside and you get told no, to keep going, I think that's a powerful lesson, particularly for the younger listeners who are like, well, I've got a dream, but you get that first rejection. Well, the first rejection isn't necessarily the end. You know, I always have
Yeah.
that the back of my mind, the analogy that people use a lot, Michael Jordan not being picked for his high school basketball team, and we
Yeah.
all know where he finished up. So
Yeah.
the first rejection isn't necessarily the end. So no, they're two great examples, Ollie. What about now? If you just give a bit of an overview for what are you doing now, and now that you've stepped out of first class cricket?
Yeah. So it's been probably a bit longer than some of the other athletes you might have spoken to. I've been out of the game for about 4 years now. In those 4 years, I lost my contract in COVID 2020. So I took a year and a half, 2 years to try and get back into it, but unfortunately, nothing really came of that. That's sort of where I sat down with my dad in 2022 and sort of thought, what's plan B and C? And we came to the conclusion of using my previous background in sports, my building on the education I did get at Loughborough, and going and doing a master's. So that was in sports business and leadership through Loughborough University as well. And alongside that, I did the director of cricket role at Guildford Cricket Club. But those both sort of finished December 2024. December 2024. And now I'm sort of transitioning out. I'm working part-time with a women and girls cricket clothing company, which is fantastic, Maiden. They're producing something that's not really on the market at the moment. So, learning there, they've been very proactive from bringing me on, teaching me sales. Bit long-winded, but that's got
no, not at all. No, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, just I'd love to just dig into the sort of the reason for your transitioning out of cricket. You mentioned there that you lost your contract, and it was during COVID, and then there was a bit of a prolonged period of, I think you said, a year and a half where you were still going through, and am I going to continue doing this? You had a conversation with your father about where am I going? What should I be doing now? Just take us into that period and just explain to us sort of your thought process and the emotions that you went through, because your story might be slightly individualized, but it's very much an elite athlete transition story.
Yeah.
So just give us your experience of that period and what sort of emotions you went through.
Yeah, it's a tough one, I think. You kind of go through that denial. You kind of go through the looking at, I will just get a contract. Probably my scenario is a little bit bespoke with COVID. So you were confronted with bubbles, distancing, lack of opportunity, lack of funding. So the crowds aren't coming in. So that's sort of a big melting pot. Whereas I sort of see now, I think, you get to the end of your contract by, the last 3 months, you probably do get opportunities. And actually the fact of not playing in that last year of your contract was probably a bit of what holding me back. But I think, it's that classic analogy of saying, as an athlete, you die twice. That contract taken away from you, you did, I don't want to say you lost my identity, but that's what everything you've been working for. It was a hard pill to swallow. But again, it's that resilient aspect of coming back, trying. I did get opportunity later on at Derbyshire, played a few games there, but I think by then I put too much pressure on myself to knowing that it was the last opportunity to really try and get it. And probably, with that flow and aspect, you're thinking about it way too much and just didn't perform. But yeah, it's a hard place to be. But I think throughout my process, I've always been lucky enough to focus on the education. So it was never the be all or end all. I've always had my degree to fall back on. My dad's obviously been a fantastic figure in my life to bounce ideas off. And actually get an understanding of, having that plan B and C, so I wouldn't be left in the scenario where I had nothing, which is, I think, crucial.
Crucial, yeah. I think there's two bits to dig into a little bit more there, and it's something James and I constantly talk about with the athletes that we work with, is the importance of a plan B and a C, because not everybody gets to leave the game on their terms. Actually, it's probably a minority that gets to leave on their terms. Most people, it's either, unfortunately, you've had an injury or the decision is made for you, which is sort of your story, is the decision was made on your behalf. So how did you feel, or how much work did you do actually before that decision was made on your behalf for life after cricket? Was there, I know you said there's a plan B and a plan C, but sort of how ready were you for that move?
Yeah, I think when you go into cricket, you have that fairy tale story of, you retire on your own terms and whatnot, and there'll be opportunity elsewhere, and it was quite a, you know, stark reality sort of hit, and you're kind of like, oh, there's nothing here to keep going. But again, I think it is sitting down and looking at those areas. And like I say, my dad's been fantastic. He's been in business for most of his life. He's ex-professional squash player, so kind of had that guidance for me. And I think I was very lucky being able to bounce those ideas. And I think with COVID, you had a lot of conversations, quite well, very South African. So it was quite hard conversations to have, and get me realizing what is next. So I maybe look, I think losing a contract and not being able to, I don't think you're ever going to be able to recover or transition out of that nicely. But just having those conversations did help, and sort of having your support bubble. My wife now, but she was fantastic at helping me transition out and even talking to her. But as a sort of a plan B, there was nothing sort of set, and I think that's where the discussion around the masters and trying to get into now looking at it, trying to get into sports consulting or sports agencies was sort of where you focused your mind. And once you had that plan, but that only came about 3-4 months afterwards. Once you had that plan, it sort of settles your mind a little bit more, rather than when you get told you've got no contract, you're phoning every county and they're sort of saying, oh no, X, Y, and Z, you can't do this. That was quite tough, because then you are sort of sat there and you do feel quite closed off and limited. But then once you start to get those other ideas and sort of even talking to athletes, later on, 2-3 years down the line of meeting other athletes and talking to them about their journeys was hugely helpful, because you just sort of say, I'm actually not alone here.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
I think all of those does help. But yeah, when you get it taken away from you at the start, you kind of sat there and you go, all right, now what? My sort of as such is gone.
And I think, Ollie, that my goldfish memory is struggling to keep up with everything you've said there, because there's so many pearls of wisdom that are relevant when Carl and I reflect on the conversations we're having on a daily basis. So in no particular order, you talk about actually when you establish that plan B, it calms your mind. Well, that's absolute sort of gold dust in terms of messaging for anybody listening to this, because invariably a lot of the pressure comes from thinking that we're invincible, indestructible, our career will go on for 15 or 20 years if we want it to, and we'll exit on our own terms. But as you very articulately, and I really admire your candor, said, look, it doesn't always happen like that. So a lot of people don't invest in the plan B until the problems arise, the contract's not there. And so a lot of our messaging is about, we're not accelerating you to the end of your career, but we want everybody to think about, how can I invest in myself, in my skills, in my knowledge, so that I don't feel that intense pressure. If the worst happens, injury or a contract doesn't materialize that we thought, I'm in a better place. So I think that was really important. Now, you caught up quite quickly, because you had a good support network. You had your partner, now your wife, and your dad with that mentoring type role, which again is another area that we're hugely passionate about, that ATA can act as that sort of mentor, plus the ambassadors that we're bringing on with their specific skills and experience. They can also act as mentors, because being able to talk through challenges, it's that old adage of a problem shared is a problem halved. And then you made another fabulous point about, actually, then you start to talk to other athletes and realize you're not alone. And when you tie all that together, one of the things that was hampering you, in your words, was the intensity of the pressure. I must perform. It's all or nothing. I need another contract. And actually, that works against you. Very few of us can optimize performance when we're in that intense pressure where everything's on the line. Whereas if you could have rejigged that time frame slightly, perhaps established that plan B, perhaps also started talking to other people who have experienced the challenges and actually worked out okay, so it normalizes it a bit, and got that education route lined up, all the things you did very well, but perhaps did it a bit earlier, maybe the pressure in the moment when you walked out to bat would have been slightly less. Is that a fair assessment, Ollie?
Yeah, certainly. I was just thinking when you're saying, I think it's, I think it's a really fair assessment there. And I think the bit to add is, actually, as an athlete, people want to speak to you. And sport has a very short memory. So even transitioning out 4 or 5 years ago, or 4 or 5 years to the day,
Yeah.
kind of looking and going, oh, people, you're not as relevant as you were 4 years ago. So, going into roles and, the experience, people sort of sympathize with the athlete. So I think trying to get the work experience in wherever you want to go as an athlete, you're probably more likely because they want to speak to the athletes. Whereas when you're coming out, you are a has-been and I'm still young at 29, but you are and has been at 29, 5 years out the game. People don't want to speak to you as much. So it is all of those things, being proactive as an athlete playing. And I think I did, I went straight through to university and, finished at 22. And when I did play, I was like, all right, I'm not doing any work apart from just playing. And sort of use that as an excuse. But actually, there's only so many coffee shops that I can sit in. There's only so much FIFA that I could play or whatever it is. It's actually, you look back and go, well, you have so much free time, is you should utilize it. And touching on the point of, people want to work with the athletes, people want to be with relevant athletes. And so utilizing that network and the free time, and actually not, at 22, not just using that as an excuse, and actually building on that, I think you come out with a really powerful, powerful persona to build on.
Well, Ollie, I'm not so sure you haven't tapped our phone lines, because you go from one powerful insight to the next one, and I know why Carl's chuckling, because before we came on air to record with you, we were talking about the benefit of hindsight. We were talking about how, where we are very careful to never be patronising or judgmental with everyone we talk to, we're talking with the benefit of hindsight. And as the old saying goes, everybody's a genius with the benefit of hindsight. But as we look back, one of the overwhelming messages that comes through time and again, and you've just very articulately stated it once more, is you have time. How are you using that time? And it's very easy to kid yourself into the mindset of, I need to recover, and it's all about recovery. And absolutely it is. We're not saying go and work on a building site or be on your feet for 15 hours a day. But with that time, you can invest in education. You can explore a master's program, as you've said. And that absolute perfect point that you made of, people want to talk to you when you're an elite athlete. When you are, and you haven't changed as a man or as a person, but there is a slight difference in that corporate environment when you are still Ollie, the first-class cricketer, or Andy, the professional rugby player, or Amanda, the professional hockey player. It doesn't matter, but you've got that tag of elite professional sport. And time and again, we hear from people saying, use that, leverage that, explore opportunities, speak to sponsors within your ecosystem, in your club environment, speak to contacts of the sponsors, but don't be afraid to pick up the phone and say, I'd like to come and have a coffee with you. So rather than just sitting in the coffee shop, to your point, just chewing the fat and talking with your teammates, actually go and have a coffee with someone who can give you an insight into their world, help you decide if that's an area you want to pursue. Because it's very easy to say, I haven't got time, or it compromises recovery, or as you say, I've just done a lot of studying at uni, I don't need to do it. But it's not studying because you've been made to, in that classic perhaps school analogy. It's exploring opportunities and investing in your own growth and development. So I know I'm sort of repeating back your core point, but I think it's so important. And again, I'm not critiquing your transition at all, but you've just highlighted another opportunity. In hindsight, maybe there were opportunities to have some conversations. Whether it would have transformed your transition radically, who knows? But the opportunities were there. And with the benefit of hindsight, you now see that.
Only. No, yeah, I couldn't have summed it any better.
So I suppose one of the things to tie into, Ollie, is the do's and don'ts.
Yeah.
Because this isn't, again, about saying, well, you should have done this and you should have done that. But actually, people listen to this podcast for one of the reasons you mentioned. They realise they're not alone. There'll be young athletes in their sport unsure whether they're going to get a new contract. It's getting to that time of year in certain codes, football, rugby particularly, where people are waiting for their agent to call or their club to call and say, here's your new deal. So you've touched on a few of them, and I don't want to pick them or put them in any sort of priority order. But if you looked back and said, well, with the benefit of hindsight, something that sticks in my mind as a do and something that sticks in my mind as a don't to enhance the success of your transition out of sport and into life beyond that, the next chapter, what comes to mind for you, Ollie, in that area?
I think the simple one's having a mentor or somebody you can bounce ideas off. and discuss. And I think, my dad's been fantastic at that, but at the same time, he's your dad sometimes. So you don't want to hear some of those truths. And I think back to the younger days when you're playing cricket, he would tell me stuff and I wouldn't listen. Then he'd take me to a coach and I'd listen to him, and you go, oh, he's like, well, I could save myself some money for that.
Yeah.
So I guess that support network and bouncing ideas off allows you not to rush it. Because I think also that is the thing is you jump at the first opportunity that comes out, because you need to match that income. You need to, you do feel that sort of cloud. So I think it all is all linked, but having a mentor to just discuss it. What am I good at? What is something that's, going to sort of go long term, and rather than the short term, I need to plug the gap. So yeah, that's probably how is finding a mentor to trust, discuss.
That's a great one.
And go from there. The don'ts. I'm not sure it's the don'ts, but I think it's, don't be afraid to talk to people. It's probably more positive, but have the chats, have conversations, kind of be vulnerable and sort of say to people, I am coming out of professional sport for whatever reason. They want to still talk to you, but try and utilize that network that you've created all your playing career. Because I think those are your sort of, in the sales term, the warm leads. They're the ones that are most likely to sympathize with you, give you the opportunity, sort of understand you more as a person. But don't be afraid to pick up the phone to people and just say, look, I'm an athlete and I might not have the hard skills, but you've got plenty of soft skills. They are more likely to sympathize with you that way.
No, I think they're great suggestions. And again, for the benefit of people listening to the episode, Ollie, let's think of your specific route, that sports marketing study, the masters, you into that space. You're also talking about working with Maiden, was it? The brand is the clothing around, women's clothing, girls' clothing. So all around us are opportunities that we're not always cognizant of. So if you're in a club environment, whatever discipline it is, behind the scenes, there are retail departments that are involved in the manufacturing and the sourcing and the distribution of the replica kits and all the leisure wear that sits behind it. That would be, for somebody like yourself that's got a bit of an interest in that area, there's a logical set of conversations that could happen in that space. We talk to a lot of athletes who are interested in the commercial sales arena of sport or the marketing aspects. Well, you will have staff sitting in your very stadium, your ground, that are tasked with driving the marketing and commercial agenda. So popping in after training and having a coffee in there and picking their brains and getting to know them is another very low-hanging fruit in terms of understanding those environments. And then building on that, as you say, don't be afraid to then say, could you connect me with some of the sponsors? That commercial department are working with sponsors. And so there's an opportunity there to say, who would you recommend I talk to? I want to learn a bit more about X or Y. Now, that might sound daunting, but I guarantee for anybody that's listening, you will be received with open arms. The people that work behind the scenes are working tirelessly to sell the product of which you are a core part. So the fact that a player comes and spends some time with them, they'll be flattered. They'll be genuinely keen to engage and to learn from you as much as you're learning from them. And equally, they'll be more than happy to connect you with sponsors. So if anybody does feel daunted about that, go and have the conversation. Because in my experience, in Carl's experience, we haven't had a single athlete come back to us and say, yeah, my own club wouldn't help me. They wouldn't connect me. And there's a whole world of conversations. You don't have to have 50 a week. You could have 1 or 2 a week. Over the course of a season, that's a lot of conversations. Over the course of a career at a club where you might have several seasons, it's a phenomenal amount of conversations. And then when you start to dream on that process, you might have opportunities for work placements, for internships, for popping in and spending a bit of time in their office or in their environment in the off season. But all of that starts with your point. Don't be frightened to have a conversation. And I'm sure when you look back, you'll think, yeah, if I'd have done that and it's not a critique in any way, shape or form, but when you think of the people working behind the scenes in first class cricket, I'm sure they would have been only too delighted to talk to you and share knowledge and make introductions.
Yeah, I think just touching on that as well is the world of sport is so vast. Like everything you see has some sort of team behind it. So actually just exploring those options. And I use sport because most people, well, everyone here is an athlete, so they have that interest in sport. But everything you see has got some sort of person dedicated to that. So just having those conversations actually helps you, create the picture that actually something you might take an interest in and go down. It was only really when I went into the researching of where can you go, doing my masters and seeing the world of sport, where this sort of new world was open to me. But just every single thing you see at your whatever stadium, team, etc., has somebody there doing it, and
Yeah.
one of those things might interest you. So just exploring those will definitely help.
Yeah, and I think listening to you, it's probably fair to say, Ollie, you're still very much in the heart of the transition, aren't you? Which is another important story. You've taken control. You've battled to try and get that contract renewal. You've sat down with your wife and with your dad, and you've got that support group and said, okay, now's the step to make a decision. Now's the time. You've invested in your education and gone off and done that master's study, but you're also exploring that sports marketing and the consultancy. You're also engaging with the Maiden brand and what they're doing. And I think that's another powerful lesson, that there's not automatically you take one piece out the jigsaw, my first class career, and click the other one in and it's an immediate perfect fit. That actually you have to have a few different irons in the fire, for want of a better phrase. And so I think I get a sense from you that you are still establishing what exactly is the right fit for you, but you're doing it the right way, with a multitude of conversations and opportunities that you're pursuing sort of concurrently at the same time.
Yeah, I think it might seem like I've probably got it all together at the moment, but it is one of those transition periods where you finished everything and you go, right, actually, what do I really want to do? So yeah, again, having the discussions with my wife, she probably bores her to death, but just listening and running the ideas through with her, it's you come to these points and you go, well, where do I actually want to go? And then if anything in my career has taught me anything, it is setting that goal and setting your energy towards what you want to achieve and then going for it. And I think it is that powerful analogy of channeling your energy. If you've got your energies and creating those plan B, C's and open the opportunities, but actually where do you want to get to as your end goal, which as athletes, we are goal driven.
Yes.
But handling those energies to, this is actually where I want to go, which for me is the sports agency side.
Yeah.
Allows me to have the right conversations, do the right things, even LinkedIn people, message people, go for coffees. And it just sort of keeps that going. Whereas when I go through a period of 2 to 3 weeks where I'm not having these conversations and things go a bit stale, is where I get back into my own head. But when that ball gets rolling and you're having those discussions, even just meeting people, other athletes, etc., it starts to feel that there's more opportunities open and a different door opens. And I wasn't looking in this direction. Oh, I did. And even the way that I've got this job at Maiden Cricket was just by complete coincidence, having a conversation through a mutual friend. He said, oh, my friend's opening up, starting up a women and girls cricket clothing company. You've obviously come out the game. He's not a cricketer, but his girls play cricket, and they've had massive success in the first 6 months of going live. You two should connect, and sort of everything happens, and then there I am. So it's
perfect. And I think it's a sense of control, Ollie. That's something that all sportsmen and women crave. Very few like to be in an environment where you feel you're completely rudderless. You want to go and work on your skills. You want to go and work in the nets on your batting. You want to work on your conditioning, whatever it may be, to give yourself the best chance of success. And actually, what we're talking about here is you're taking control of, right, well, what is within my immediate sphere of influence. I can study, right, I'm going to go and do this program. I can have the conversations. I can connect with people on LinkedIn. And it's funny, as you were talking, I was thinking of an individual that was challenging some of this rhetoric and saying, well, what about that sort of classic Tony Robbins analogy, burn the boats, never have a plan B, because if you have a plan B, you won't focus on plan A. And it's an interesting challenge, but the way that we sort of reposition that is you still have your absolute desire to excel as a professional sportsman. And so you do everything within your control on plan A. It's not about, well, I won't go to the nets, I won't do my conditioning, I won't do my analysis. You still do all of that. But the harsh reality for the majority of elite athletes is you will not set yourself up for life in the sporting chapter. And therefore, it will be negligent to burn the boats completely and say, I don't need to do anything when I retire, because for the vast majority of sportsmen and women around the world, they absolutely do still have financial commitments to meet when they retire. So the plan B is not, as we always say, accelerate and it's an either or, step out of sport into business. No, it's just about all the things you've talked about, having conversations, exploring what you might be able to study. Perhaps people might be thinking now, I wonder if I could do a master's alongside my training. Who is my support network? Do I have the right mentors? Who could I meet for a coffee within my club ecosystem? Who can they connect me to outside the club ecosystem? None of that compromises plan A. It just means you have a plan B that is evolved and ready to access in 1 year or 10 years. But there isn't a sudden, oh, I need a plan B and I haven't even started one. So that particular individual knows who they are and they'll be saying, oh, yeah, that's hopefully a fair articulation. But I understand people say, going back to your earlier point, I've just got out of university. I've just got into first-class cricket. I don't need to worry about any of this. I'm going to just play. Well, your story, I think, is more power to the notion of, yes, do everything you can to excel, but also invest in that plan B.
Yeah, and I think even when you come out the game as athletes, we have the structure in place. So you get the training times, you get your gym sessions, you got your whatever it is, and that's how your day looks. And then when you come out of it, you got this blank slate, and you kind of sat there and you go, right, I've got so much time here. It's almost like actually sticking to your gym, because I hated gym. I hated it. I did it, but I hated it. I could see the reason why, and the performance aspect. But when you came out of it 2 years later, and you're like, I don't need to perform to the level that I was. So why am I doing all of this? But actually, in that time, it was what my DNA was. I did take pride in being healthy. I did take pride in being fit. And when you let that slip, then that mental state comes in as well, and you kind of it's creating that structure as well. So let's have X amount of conversations in this week. Let's stick to your gym routine and stay fit, healthy body, healthy mind, and all of that. But once you come out of it, you've got no structure. And then the day is yours, and you kind of sat there and you're going, right, well, I had somebody telling me I had training at 12 to 1, then I had gym 1 to 2, and even to the extent that sometimes food was catered for. So even just having a plan on how you're going to structure your day, how you're going to structure or attack your next steps does help as well. Because
it's another very, very well articulated point, Ollie, that we hear a lot. The loss of identity and the loss of structure sort of bolt together. That they sort of both feed each other. You were the first-class cricketer, or you were the rugby player, or you were the footballer, and everything you did sat around that, and all of that structure was there. And that's when we get into the nuts and bolts of coaching individuals or helping them develop their brand. It's very much about create your own structure, whatever works. You immediately step out of sport. Maybe there's an element, right? I walk the dog every day at this time. That's fine. I go to the gym every day at this time, or I do the school run, and then we'll do an element of branding work. We'll do some networking time on LinkedIn, but you don't sit there and stare at your screen for 10 hours and blow your mind. You do an element, and then you stop, and then you do something else, and then you stop. So I think structure is a really important thing that a lot of people neglect, but you can rebuild the structure, and you can rebuild it whatever feel. It might be a exercise, it might be around a golf, it might be, right, I take some time and just educate myself, listen to a podcast or read, but actually doing certain things consistently at the same time every day gets you back into that mindset of, this is what I do on a Monday, this is what I do on a Tuesday, this is what I do on a Wednesday. And it helps transition that loss of identity from a super structured environment to zero structure. You then start to get on top of yourself saying, I should be doing this, I should be networking, and you end up not really doing anything and drifting back to the fridge or Netflix. So I think structure, again, is you've hit on another very, very powerful point that comes up a lot. And I think it's important. We do this a lot in episodes, Ollie. We reinforce a lot of the points back to the guests. But it's because in the private conversations we're having away from the podcast, a lot of people are talking to us almost with a mindset of, I might be the only person that this is happening to. But everything you've talked about today, loss of identity, or try and protect your structure, look for a mentor, don't be frightened to have conversations. These are all relevant to existing athletes around the world. So when people hear it, I hope it gives them a sense of, right, it's not just me. And also, I don't need to rely on the benefit of hindsight, because Ollie's giving me insights that I can action now whilst I'm still competing.
Yeah, and I think you touched on it. It's the conversations, and I'm a random person to most people here, but just messaging people. And I think most athletes want to share their story, are approachable. So like I said, I touched on it earlier. just on networking events with ex-athletes and just talking to them. And it's quite cathartic, actually, hearing somebody from rugby or cycling has moved out of the sport, and they sort of do face the same problems that you're facing in a different context, but even bouncing ideas off them. They say, oh, well, this worked for this. And you go, oh, I kind of like that. Or, I kind of like this. And, even like I say, the power of LinkedIn is massive. It's I got into my late 20s, LinkedIn is more powerful than Instagram. So
exactly. And the times are changing. We were talking to a player last night, and he was saying, he's sitting around and there's a split now. There's a gap between training. There's a lot of the players just scrolling Instagram and TikTok and just looking for some sort of sensory distraction. He said, but then there was another group that were all on LinkedIn. And he said, there's a shift now and they're looking at opportunities and network. And he said that wouldn't have happened a few years ago.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. And just really reinforcing that point, what we always say to people is the worst that can happen when you ask anybody to connect, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's at a networking event, as you say, is they say no. But most people's ego will not allow them to say no, because if you walk up to somebody or you connect with them and say, I really admire and respect what you have done, I'd like to learn from you, would it be okay to connect, meet for a coffee, have a Zoom call, just so I could bounce a few questions off you and I could learn from your wisdom? How many people are going to turn around and say, absolutely not. How dare you compliment me and ask for my advice? So actually, when you actually make a bit of a joke out of it, it reframes it, I hope, for a lot of people to say, very rarely will anybody say no. What we always say is they might say, love to help, can't right now because I'm absolutely swamped with project A or project B, but let's get something in the diary. And you'll find within a few short weeks maximum, most people will give you some time. So don't be frightened to approach people because they're not going to say no.
No, I think on that as well, Jim, just to expand a little bit, we've seen some research recently that highlights why most businesses fail. And it typically comes down to two things, and it's communication and teamwork. And that's pretty much everything an athlete is you've got no choice but to be able to work within a team, and you've got no choice but to be able to communicate clearly and quickly with strategy. And these meetings where we're suggesting athletes reach out to your network, utilize your sponsors, have a conversation. It's actually beneficial to the sponsors to have these conversations with athletes as well, because they don't know what they're going to get. They might have a conversation with an individual that sparked a relationship, and this business owner's thinking, I need someone like that in my business. I'm going to stay in contact with that individual, because if I was to employ them, I know what impact that's going to have on my business and my team. And Deloitte have done I don't think it's quite published yet, but they've done a study to understand what impact does an athlete have on a department. And I can't quite remember over what period of time it was, but it was several different departments, several different sporting disciplines. But on average, the increase in productivity was 150%, which is insane. Just because one elite individual went into an environment. And it's just, there's another piece of research out there as well that suggests who you're sat near impacts the work that you deliver. If you're sat next to a high performer, you will deliver high performance work. If you're sat next to a low performer, you will deliver low performance work. So the impact of introducing an athlete to businesses is just incredible. And this is becoming more widely known now as well. But James and I have conversations constantly where business leaders, business owners, industries are actively saying to us, we want athletes. We want athletes, because then we know what they bring to the table. We can educate them on our industry. We can educate them on our product. And then we can just step back, full autonomy, off you go. And we know you're going to go and be successful. So that power of networking, it's not just beneficial for the athlete. It's super beneficial for the organizations and the sponsors as well.
I think that'll enhance confidence, won't it, Carl? Because part of the challenge is athletes sometimes say, well, why would they want to talk to me? You alluded to this, Ollie. Well, they will because you're an elite athlete. But that understanding of selfishly, there's something in it for them. It can enhance their organization. And what we hear a lot from businesses now, and what we always relay to athletes, is they recruit on character. They all recognize we can develop your skills, we can develop your competency, but it's your DNA, your character that we want in the organization for all the reasons Carl's touched on. So never go into a conversation and think, oh, well, what would I add? You could add a lot, and any skills gap or knowledge gap can be closed quite quickly. So Ollie, again, as with all of our guests, and you've been no exception, you've provided a number of wise reinforcements of the things that we're talking to hundreds of athletes about. And so I hope it really serves people and it really gives them confidence to learn from, as we keep saying, the benefit of hindsight. Is there anything else that you wanted to share? Anything we've not touched on, or do you think we've given a good overview of tapping into your wisdom and extracting it?
No, I think we've covered everything. Yeah, it's just the power of reaching out and talking to people. And yeah, Carl touched on it. It's the connections and actually discussing people, and you never know where those opportunities come from. And just opening a door and having a chat with somebody could lead to, oh, I know X, Y, and Z, and try this and that, and there you go. So and I think how we even came across is Carl reached out, just
exactly.
a message, and look, here we are having a chat and going from there. So
exactly. Well, and in the spirit of connections, anybody that's really enjoyed listening to you, of which I know there'll be many, Ollie, where's the best place to find you? Is LinkedIn the best platform to connect with you?
LinkedIn's probably the best, just Ollie Soames. Pretty self-explanatory, but more than happy to discuss with people. It's a big passion of mine, helping athletes, helping people try and navigate some of the stuff that I might have waded through. So yeah, any help. Yeah, more than happy to help as many people as possible.
Perfect.
Fabulous. Well, Ollie, you've genuinely helped a lot of people with your insights today. We're very grateful for your time. We look forward to working with you further in the future. Thanks very much.
Thanks,
cheers,
guys.
Ollie.
Cheers. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks for joining us this week on our ATA podcast. If you found this conversation insightful and it resonates with your journey, please subscribe, follow the show, and stay connected with us for more insight, resources, and information on how we at ATA are supporting your preparation for life beyond the game.